Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the final episode of the Content Matters podcast for 2025. I'm really happy to have a really great person here with me today. RobertRose is the founder and chief troublemaker at Seventh Bear, which is a strategic marketing consulting firm. He's a fractional CMO and a trusted marketing advisor, a best-selling author, and a founding member of the team that built the Content Marketing Institute into a leading voice for the practice of content marketing. Robert has worked with over 500 companies, from ambitious startups to global giants. He's helped them elevate strategy and build marketing that matters. He leads workshops and keynotes around the world, and he co-hosts This Old Marketing with Joe Pulizzi, which is one of the top marketing podcasts out there today. And Robert has authored 5 books on content strategy and customer experience. One of them, Content Marketing Strategy, Killing Marketing, Managing Content Marketing, and Experiences, the 7th era of marketing. And the one that we're going to talk about today, Valuable Friction, which I'm really excited to talk about. So thanks, Robert, for being with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is totally fun and very honored to be the last guest of the year.
You are. And I think a really good conversation to have after the crazy year that we've been having. So
Yeah, it's been an interesting year for sure in all sorts of ways.
Oh my God, yes. So I want to read something from the book that, like I was telling Robert before we started, that I was started reading his book when I was sitting in the car waiting for my daughter, who went off to do some kind of work for university, and it just spoke to me. It just said things that I think, and I'm probably not the only one who's been feeling this way, but it said, so speed became the goal in and of itself. More output faster, more channels all at once, more convenience, more now. We optimized everything for velocity, not just in how we work, but in how we learn, communicate, consume, and even create. And when all friction is removed, every delay is smoothed out and every hesitation designed away. What's left is often something unmemorable, or worse, untrustworthy. And yeah, what kind of drove you to drive this book? What was the thing that triggered it for you?
There was a couple of things, but the main inspiration came from. It's interesting that you chose that passage because it was the fact that what I was seeing, and not just with my own clients and the work and all, but what I was seeing with colleagues, what I was seeing when I would go to conferences, what I was seeing basically whenever I would observe marketing and business in the world, everything was wrapped around the axle of speed, right? So it was so we got into the whole move fast and break things, just ship it, make sure you just ship it. And everything wrapped around the factor of how fast can we get it out, how fast can we produce, can we publish, can we measure, can we iterate, it all became about speed. There was a famous interview with Mark Zuckerberg where he talked about how speed was their main thing, and that he really looked down on companies like Apple because he said Apple can't move very fast, and that's what Facebook, or in his case Meta, was capable of doing, was moving faster. And when the interviewer then kind of pressed him on that and said, well, yeah, but is it just faster? Like moving faster doesn't make you better or more competitive. And you can actually visually see him wrestle with that in his brain, where he ends up going, well, it's not just speed, it's the fact that we can change directions more quickly. And that was sort of the key for me, which is, we so often in business and marketing and in life, we mistake the concept of agility with the concept of speed. In other words, changing direction more quickly or being able to adapt more quickly is different than moving faster. And that was the key. And the second thing that layers over the top of that was when I would ask CMOs and CEOs and just people in life, about what they wanted to do, their strategy, where they were trying to go, they would always say, we need to go faster. We need to move faster. We need to publish faster. We need to do things faster. And I would always ask, well, how fast is fast enough? Like, how do you know you've gotten to the point where you're moving at speed, at the right speed, right? And instead of just moving fast for fast's sake, because Of course, it makes sense that the faster you move, the less friction you have. Therefore, the smoother the surface has to be in order for you to move faster. But it also means that you're not catching things. You're not pivoting. You're not changing direction. You're just moving for fast sake. And
Yeah.
those two things together sort of gave me this idea of where is value, like where, like in our lives, in our decisions, in our relationships, in our strategy, in our operations, where is value? And the value is in the friction. It is in the tension. It is, I use the metaphor, and I love this metaphor. It's like, how do you know a good game is being played? It's not how fast it is, it's how much you hear the squeak of the shoe. And the squeak of the shoe on the court is how you know a great game is being played. And that squeak is the pivot, it's the
Mm.
movement, it's the changing of direction. And that's where the value really is.
Right. So, but you say that not all value is this, not all friction is the same. So, and that's what you say, like, it's not about necessarily slowing down,
Right.
it's about slowing down in the right way. And that's where you talk
Exactly.
about it's friction, but it's a certain type of friction.
Yeah, that's right. It's basically taking the moment to introduce the tension, right? And the tension exhibits itself in a number of ways. And through the book, I go through, sort of what I call relational friction, operational friction, strategic friction, creative friction. Each sort of approach to life has its own particular kind of tension or friction that you introduce for value. And and we can talk about specific ones, but ultimately it comes down to really taking the moment to introduce some form of tension into the thing that we're trying to do, whether that's moving in a different direction, so that's the tension, whether it's introducing a self-constructed barrier so that we actually introduce some tension, so that we have to actually think about things before we do it. In some cases, it is about slowing down the process or introducing, the kind of tension or friction that will make you slow down. But it's not about slowing down full stop. It is ultimately how fast, the right amount of speed, not necessarily speed for speed's sake.
Right. And so today, that kind of speaks so much more true because of all this AI, the AI that everybody is trying to implement in their businesses and even in their personal lives. Um, because it's always how much more can we add into AI to take away the work that we have to do? But nobody really talks about, well, what does that mean for us as humans, for us as the workers, if we're giving all of our work to AI?
Yeah, it's this AI is a perfect example. And I speak a little bit about this in the book, but AI is the perfect example because here is this amazing, earth-shattering new innovation called artificial intelligence. And specifically, let's just speak about generative AI, right? So the thing that we're sort of lumping all AI into these days, sort of the chatbot, sort of creation of content, et cetera, thinking partner, whatever you want to call it. The immediate reaction we had, and that the world seems to be having, is here's this amazing technology that's going to help us move faster, that basically, and more efficiently, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what all the threat is. It's when you hear the stupid bumper sticker that says, AI is not going to take your job, somebody using AI is going to take your job. And so basically, what it's do our immediate reaction as humanity, as a culture with AI, is to say, how can we move faster? And to me, when I think about it, I go, here is the most amazing technology, the most amazing innovation that has come along in years, and the perfect invitation for us to slow down, to introduce. Because why? Because it enables us to speed up.
Yeah.
In other words, if now I can use AI to pressure test my thinking, to think through things more clearly, to introduce tension, to really use things in a better way, to get to better thinking, to get to more innovation, to get to better solutions, to get to better content, to get to better strategy. It's the perfect invitation for us to, as a technology, for us to take a breath and slow down, because we can actually use it to help speed up the end execution or expression of our thought or whatever it happens to be.
Right.
So here's this perfect innovation that's inviting us, in literally inviting us to slow down as humanity, and we're not listening. And that's, to me, that's a tragedy, and it's also an opportunity, because the way I look at it is this, we can take this opportunity as content creators and in life and in, all the different aspects of where we can introduce friction and use AI to sort of zig while everybody else is zagging. And I think, the more value will get created there. But
Yeah.
it's an uphill battle for sure.
It, from the marketers that I've talked to, because that's kind of where my focus is, it's a lot more of, let's introduce AI and get our workflows and processes and our content developed so we can do more of it. It's not so we can slow down and think about
Right.
what
Right.
we actually want to create and what we want to build. And I do appreciate the marketers who tell me we're implementing AI, but we're not decreasing our workforce. But at the same time, that doesn't mean they're taking their time. It means we're adding more stuff to their pile, because
Yeah.
now they can do more because the AI is doing more. Like, it's crazy. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's why I'm doubling down on teams for 2026 and 2027, and sort of the idea of doubling down on humans, because here's the calculus, right? And the calculus that many, I won't say most, let's say many, it's the popular zeitgeist, if you will, which is the popular sort of conventional thinking is, we can use AI to either do more with the people we have or do the same or more with less people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, fine. That calculus is probably correct. However, think about for a moment, why wouldn't you then, because you have to also believe, if you believe that path is true, in other words, you believe that that's an optimal path, you also have to believe the corollary, which is you could do better or even more work with more or the same number of people if you had AI. And so why are you so fast to go to less people? In other words, if I have the choice between more diverse voices, better strategists, better people who can spend more time on quality thinking and build wisdom into that team, the value, the differentiating value into my marketing team using AI, why wouldn't I do that instead of looking for the shortcut? I can churn out more crap with less people. And
Yeah.
to me, it's like it's such a no-brainer answer for me, but the pressure from boards, from venture funds, from bosses, from CEOs is no, no, no. This becomes a way that we can introduce, in the book, I talk about this sort of like, you know, quintessential magical marketer who's going to be wearing some sort of meta headset, basically vibe coding off in the corner, basically running all these marketing agents that are going to somehow magically make the company more and more profitable. It's like, you've told me everything you need to tell me about your view of marketing, full stop, as a function in your business, if you go down that road.
Yeah. The generalist marketer,
Yeah.
which which I'm not really necessarily opposed to on some level, but I don't think that one person can do everything in a
Well, you've
marketing.
just introduced the single point of failure, right? Because what you're assuming though is if one person can command a bunch of AI agents to do your marketing strategy, well, why do you even need the one person?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the one person doing? Like, why don't you just have like the CEO do it or the CFO do it or some other person, right? Why do you need anybody?
You're giving people at companies ideas, Robert. Don't go there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you talk about in the book about four specific friction points.
Yeah.
So let's kind of just cover each one really quickly. Like
Sure.
creative friction as a writer, really I understood. Like,
Yes.
slow down, take 10 minutes. Don't ship your product. Don't ship your article the second you write it. Very guilty of doing that. But so let's talk about that one.
Yeah, that one, honestly, the best, and I actually opened with this quote. Rick Rubin, who wrote an amazing book on creativity, and he's got a quote in the book that I just absolutely adore, where he talks about slowing down the creative process. That taste and discernment is the real key in the creation process. and it's his magic sauce, right? Like he says, I don't play music, I'm not a musician, I don't. He said, but my magic sort of power is taste and discernment, which of course is great for most creative directors, artistic directors, and artists in general. However, what he talks about is, he says, and this quote is, I use it in the book, which is, when the work has 5 mistakes, it's not ready yet. But when it has 8, it might be. And it's taking the time to understand where where the human thumbprint is, and where it has made a dent in whatever piece of work is being done. That to me is the introduction of tension or friction in the creative process. And that can take many forms, right? It might be literally the time limit you put on yourself. It might be the fact that you're not going to ship it. There's the famous, I don't know if you do this, I do this, the 24-hour rule, which is, if I write something, I don't ship it the same after I write it. I actually let it sit for at least 24 hours and then come back and reread it again to make sure that it still says what I want it to say, because I'm
Yeah.
too close to it at that point. Introducing all those little tidbits, and I put a few of those tidbits into the actual practicality of creative friction, is that's true introduction of the friction of creativity that Rick Rubin so eloquently talks about in his book.
Yeah, so I record all of my calls when I write articles for Diginomica. So I talk to a lot of product company marketing people, and I record my calls, and then I go back and I take notes from the transcripts, and I re-listen to the conversation. And one of the things that I tried one day was, what if I just put the conversation into Notebook LM, and I tell it to tell me what are the key ideas from this conversation.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It works great. But what I find I miss when I do that, I miss things. There are
Yeah.
certain things that me as a writer and as a marketer want to think about and want to hear. And when I use the Notebook LM to tell me what's the most important stuff, I miss things that are more important to me in my mind for the article. So I've stopped doing that. I stopped doing that and just went back to, let's re-listen to the conversation, let's make key points, and then I also get all these ideas for other articles I could write.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's you're touching, and we can move on whenever you like, but you're touching on. So this is something I actually worked with a client on, right? Where they were using, and it's not a bad application of AI, but they were taking, the 400 customer interviews that they did, and then they would run it through ChatGPT or some sort of AI engine to basically identify the patterns. Basically, what did all their customers think, right? And what are the problems that they're having in their customer service, and through that, and it did a fine job of identifying sort of the trends. What it didn't do was identify the anomalies, right? And sort of say, and so it wasn't so it's not that you shouldn't use AI to identify the trends, but it doesn't excuse you from then not reading the entirety of the 400 reviews to be able to spot that one customer review where they said something so profound and eloquent that it's like, God, that's a great idea,
Yeah.
right? They were the only one to actually say it, but it's not going to come up as a trend. It's not going to come up even if you say, well, what were the cool things that people said? Because, it doesn't know, it can't process that as any sort of math. So finding that one little comment that one customer made in, that, 402 of the interviews, that's the gold that you miss by not introducing, like, okay, yes, sure, do the thing, pressure test it, but it doesn't
Yeah.
excuse you from going and read the thing. That's more operational friction than anything else. But that's such a great idea. I'm glad you have discovered that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go a little more into operational friction then, because this one was the biggest chapter, I think, out of all the 4 frictions.
Oh,
And
was it? That's
I
interesting.
think it was, or it
Yeah.
looked like it to me. And it was the one that to me was like, yeah, I so relate to the challenges of how that works.
Yeah. I mean, it's really in the how we get work done, right? How we do things, right? And so operational friction comes from everything from making meals with your kids, to working through a sales pitch deck, right, for a startup, right? And the way that you start to think about it is, we spend so much time trying to reduce the friction in terms of our operation. You just take a content publishing life cycle, right? We spend so much time trying to reduce the amount of friction in there to try and speed up that cycle, that sometimes we miss things, and sometimes we produce things that we didn't really mean to produce.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things, Jeannie Dietrich, who I know you know, she said something wonderful. This was in response actually to when I launched the book. She said one of the things that they do is they have what's called the devil's advocate meeting, right? Which is they're going to produce something. They actually have a meeting where they all get together and look at the thing that they're about to produce as part of their workflow process, where they press on it, where they actually press on the idea, and they actually play, well, what would the fight be on this? Or what would what does the devil's advocate say about this? And somebody takes that role and they introduce that into the workflow process to make sure that ultimately when they're producing something, that they really have thought through all of the counter arguments and things that they want to do. And that's it's that kind of tension, introducing that sort of thing into meetings. One of my favorite examples of this is a CEO friend of mine who, when they have a brainstorming meeting, right, it's not just about jumping in and basically getting everybody going, on brainstorming and let's finish this as fast as we possibly can. It's like he takes a minute in the beginning and actually goes around the room to everybody and basically says, "Hey, what do what do you think here? Right? What are you wrestling with that you haven't come to conclusion on yet?"
Yeah. I found, I liked how you said it's not about templates. It's just about slowing down the process and putting moments in the process that make you all
That's
stop
right.
and think about what you're trying to do. So yeah, and I know a guy who used to do devil's advocate in our meetings all the time. He drove
Yeah.
us crazy, but it was
Yeah.
good.
And the thing is, it's not accidentally doing those things. It's actually introducing those things purposely, right? That's the whole idea of the valuable friction idea, is that we're not just accidentally doing this sometimes, occasionally, when we feel like it, or when something's important. We do it all the time. We introduce it because it's a valuable part of our operation.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Number three, strategic friction.
Strategic friction is that sort of, and it's interesting because, when I actually point to the various parts of the body for this. And the initial reaction, it was funny because when I said that this points to here, the heart, or the gut really is different than where you think it might be, which would be the head, right? The
Yeah.
head is more sort of the creative friction, right? Where we're in our heads and stuff. This is more that gut feel, right? So that that gut, in terms of making your strategy about the way you're going, how much information do you need before you make a decision? How are you actually applying your strategy, thinking and doing those things? And so much of this is a great, example of where AI plays a role, right? How many people have you heard, oh, AI is helping me develop my business strategy, my marketing strategy. All I need to, or my persona strategy, and my favorite ones, like, all I need to do is say, put on your, the whole giving your AI sort of a hat to
Yeah.
wear is like,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's just so silly. But anyway, it's like you say, oh, put on your best marketer hat and give me my marketing strategy for my small business. And of course, it comes back with, some rote plan that, is like, okay, it sounds good when you read the words, but if you even like scratch at the surface a little bit, it's like, really? Okay, really? Is that good? It's certainly not differentiated. Um, and so the strategy friction is really, how do I start introducing tension, conflict in some cases? Like, how do I have either someone who can say, that's not good, that's, or have you thought about this, or have you thought about that? AI can play that role. There's no doubt. And that's, in many ways, that's the way I use AI, is to say, hey, here's an idea I have about a strategy. Why won't this work? Tell me why this won't work. And really pressure test yourself. That's the introduction of friction, instead of how do I get to the plan the fastest I can get to the plan, and go and move fast and break things and not worry about it. It's like, well, what if we don't move fast and break things? What if we move at the appropriate speed and don't break anything? It's like, we don't need to break things. I don't know why we feel like we need to break things. There's so few items that actually have that first mover advantage. It's like, no, let's just take a beat, take a moment, and really understand what it is we're trying to do.
Yeah. Probably a good way to think of that is, if you're leading a category, you can afford to kind of go fast or whatever. But if you're not that leader, you need to find out what makes you stand out and differentiate so that you can actually be competitive with that.
Even if you are a leader, right? It affords you the ability to slow down, right?
Yeah.
In other words, if you are so it's like, if you want to think about how I'm going to pivot, how I'm going to shift directions, and this is what Zuckerberg gets to when he's talking about his strategy versus Apple's strategy and why he's so much better. When he talks about the idea of it being all about speed. And then see, and the funny thing is that if you look at that video of that podcast he was on, all the comments on that video are like, yeah, speed kills. It's awesome. Speed, speed, speed. Move as fast as possible. So people aren't hearing him because they're listening to it to be so fast to only hear the very surface level. They're not taking the time to go, what's he really saying there? Because if you actually dive into what he's really saying, what he's saying is that, and I don't know whether they believe this truly or not, or whether this is just, him being PR comms guy, but basically what he's really saying in that interview is, no, it's not moving faster that makes us different than Apple or have a different strategy. It's our ability to take the moment to pivot faster, to be more flexible, to the squeak of the shoe, right? To move in a different direction. Whereas Apple has got this sort of institutional momentum that doesn't allow them to move as quickly or adapt or learn as quickly. And that may or may not be true, in terms of your perspective on Apple strategy versus Meta strategy, but that's what he's saying, right? He's not, and then that's the key of strategic friction, is that it's the ability to think it through and make the right pivot rather than move faster in a less friction way.
Yeah. I like that one. All right. So the fourth one is the relationship one, which
I'm glad you saved this one for last. Yeah. It's I could write a whole book on just this, right? This is the most personal one. And even in the book, I note that, this is the one that's got the most emotion attached to it, because it's the one that affects us individually the most, which is our relationships with people. And we can see that over the last 25 years, we have lost so much of the relationship friction, right? With the way that we don't want to interact with people anymore, what social media has done to human interaction, what, all of what technology has done, what texting has done. It's like we won't even take a phone call anymore. You won't even take a cold call from your mom, much less, somebody who's randomly. It's like, why are this person call? Like, why do they want to interact with me? It's like we've really lost the plot when it comes to interacting with each other, to the point where, and I sort of draw this example out in the book. When we have made culturally normal this idea of saying, how are you? Right. When we see someone physically for the first time. Right. And what we do internally is, and this has become a cultural habit that we have as humans now, we say, fine. Right. We say fine, because we know that the asker of the question doesn't really want to know how we're doing. They don't really want to know, but maybe they do. Maybe they really do want to know how we're doing, but we make the assumption, because we want to move through this with as little friction as possible. Don't introduce any tension into this, because this is supposed to be a pleasant meeting or a pleasant lunch or whatever it is. So I'm fine. Even if I'm desperate and I'm, I've got some ailment, or I'm financially insecure, or whatever it is, it's like, I'm fine. Things are fine. We say fine. And then in return, what's interesting is we say, great. How are you doing? And we say this, we do the same thing. So we end up having these conversations with each other that are completely superficial, and we never introduce any tension. You see it in meetings all the time. If I see the word alignment in meetings one more time, it's like, what? No. Alignment in meetings doesn't mean introducing tension. What it means is let's couch everything in the meeting so that what we're doing is basically getting everybody to nod so that we can get out of there as fast as we possibly can without introducing any conflict. Yeah. We have lost all sense of conflict and having any level of tension. It's in our politics. It's in our relationships at home with our kids. It's in the relationships we have with each other and friends. And what I'm suggesting is that we are losing something as a component of that. We're just losing, we're losing value by not introducing that tension and being willing to have that tension in our lives.
Yeah. I kind of relate to that in work with group settings, where one person who's leading the group is doing everything real time, like you said. They're real, and I'm not a real time thinker. I like to get the idea and have time to chew on it and think about it and come back with ideas. I don't work well on the spot, but that's how he works, and it's just it makes me not participate as much because I just don't feel comfortable, right? And so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you lose people when there are people like me who need that time to process and think. You lose them, and you lose the value that they might bring to the conversation.
Yeah, I use the example in the book. I think it's in this chapter where I talk about, you know, various sort of scenarios, right? And the one scenario I talk about is the family sitting down for dinner, where the mom is making dinner for the family. Dad is on his iPad trying to figure out the family vacation. The kids on their iPhones playing a game or on TikTok or whatever. She's, watching the news as she makes dinner and having her own conversation. And they're not even interacting, right? There's no interaction at all. And basically, everything's getting done. Like the vacation gets planned, the kids do their homework, she gets dinner on the table, everything's fine, it's all good. But there was no value in that dinner. There was no value exchanged in that dinner because they just were off in their own world. There's no relationship there that's getting built. And it's just it's a sad thing that's in many ways where we are. And so, yeah, are the no phone dinners or no phone evenings a good thing? Probably. But the point being, it's just purposely introducing some friction into your, into your evenings, into your personal life, into your work life, can add so much value. And that's even just thinking about it. Even caring is a step, right?
Yeah.
I use the example in the book. I talk about the skip intro button, as sort of this meaningless example of friction in our lives, right? Where Netflix has given us the skip intro button for for TV shows. And of course, we all do it. We skip the intro for the season, even though the artists, the creators of that show are still putting tremendous amount of effort into the introduction of the show. Some of them do individual introductions to each episode. Sometimes it's unique music. They're certainly thanking the contributors. They're sort of setting the mood for whatever the show, there's that setting the mood of what the episode is going to be about. All of that goes into the intro. And we have just become accustomed to like skipping it, because because we want to get to the show as fast as we can. In the scheme of life, that's a meaningless example, but we don't even think about it anymore, right? That's the thing. It's like, are you actually, is your life more valuable because you're skipping the intro, or are you missing out on something that is actually a creative experience that might add some cultural value to your life? It's like,
Yeah.
the answer is probably no, but we don't even think about it. And that's the key, is just even thinking about it.
Yeah. I am. I skip intro too much. Okay, but so these are 4 types of friction. You said there's more, but you chose these 4 for a specific reason.
I chose those 4 because they neatly turn into a manageable book, to be quite frank. And so, what I didn't want to say was that this is the only 4.
Right.
You can think about others, that aren't relational, operational, strategic, or creative. There are all kinds of things in the way that we, everything from career management to, and maybe in some ways they're either subcategories or they're in a Venn diagram and overlap between the two.
Yeah.
You could certainly think of different ways to categorize things, and I'm sure I've missed something big. But to me, it was one of the things that I wanted to do with this book was, one, in a meta kind of way, I didn't want to make it a 400-page book, because I wanted the idea out there, and I didn't. What I wanted to do in the book was basically, as I was just mentioning, I want people to just ask the question. I'm not trying to solve anything for
Yeah.
anybody in this, right? This is not a how-to or a life coach book or anything like that. All I wanted to do was sort of bring it up so that people go, huh, I
Yeah.
wonder how this applies to me. And it maybe applies in one of those 4 areas. And it's also not lost on me that I was picking, the brain, the heart, the gut, and the muscle, right? Which is basically the 4 areas, right? So it's the muscle memory of how we do things. That's the operational. There's the heart, which of course is our relationships. There's the head, which is our creative, and then there's the gut, which is our strategy. So, or soul, if you like that better. And so that all of that is why I picked the four, and
Right.
for and for and made it manageable, to be honest.
The other thing that you said was that looking at the way you work or the way you live in these four kind of areas of friction helps you figure out how you can differentiate yourself. So this one was kind of important to me because it's like, as I think about what I want to do next year, 2026, with my business, I keep thinking, I know what I want to do, but I don't want to do the same thing that everybody else is doing. And that's what it feels like and that's why I've been hesitant to kind of put out my ideas, because everybody's talking about the same thing. And
Yeah.
I keep thinking, what do I bring to the table that makes me different, that would make people want to work with me? And I like the idea of how you could introduce these frictions into the way you work to make that differentiation stand out.
That's thank you for pointing that out, because that is really ultimately what I wanted the point to be, which is, it's not that hopefully these frictions, introducing these kinds of things into your life, gives you more enjoyment of life, full stop, end of
Yeah.
sentence. But in a way, in today's career world, certainly, because at the end of the day, I'm a marketing guy and I'm a business guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to write a philosophical, or any sort of spiritual book or something like that. This is kind of a business book at the end of the day, but it's really built for people. And how do we differentiate ourselves in the marketplace of ideas, in the marketplace of us, right? Getting jobs as a new student, or getting changing career paths for some of us who want to change our career path, or matriculating through an organization if we want to try and become a boss. All of these different sort of ways that we have to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace of humans, to get hired, to get engaged, to make money, to live life. These frictions, I think, especially in a world that is obsessed with speed, can really differentiate you. And an example of that is, you can see it happening in the world of AI right now. So the sort of gold rush, fast, those obsessed with speed, you can see them sort of differentiating by saying, you've got to get good at AI. Tomorrow, you've got to get good at AI. You better get good at AI. By the way, Barb, did you get good at AI yet? Because you need to get good at AI.
Yeah.
And my question to that is, like, what does that even mean? What does that mean? Like, what does getting good at AI mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's like saying, how do you get good at electricity, right? Like, you need to get good at water, right? It's like, you're not going to get good at AI. What you're going to get good at is the thing that you want to get good at. If you want to be a great marketer, if you want to be a great writer, if you want to be a great storyteller, if you want to be a great musician, a great photographer, a great creative director, if you want to be a great banker, a great accountant, a great strategist, those are the things that you have to introduce. And the work is just as hard as it was 10 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. The work is still filled with friction. It's still going to take time. You still have to do the work to look at the classic. You have to understand everything about that thing. Then AI can make you better at it.
Yeah.
And so if you want to zag while everybody else is zigging toward the speed of getting good at AI, no, spend your time getting good at the thing that you want to be known for, that you want to be good at, that you want to be differentiated at, and introduce the frictions to do that. And then, yes, use AI to amplify that. Use AI as the hammer and the nail and the saw and the chainsaw that helps you amplify the skill you just developed. That's truly adding valuable friction into your life.
Yeah. It's the same story. It's a tool. And
Yeah.
if you don't know how to do the work in the first place, the tool's not going to make you better at it.
If you're a bad writer, it will only make you a worse writer.
Yeah. Thank you, Robert, for writing a book that's not a framework for, like, a tech bro framework for do my framework and you will be better automatically. Like,
Right.
oh my God.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That was, I was conscious of sort of the meta aspect of the book as well, right? I didn't want to write a book that, you know, in sort of an opposite sort of way. Like, I didn't want to write a book that you had to slog through, right?
Yeah.
That would take forever. I wanted to be a quick idea, a quick, and to your point, a question, not an answer, right? And it's not It's definitely not a framework for how to change your life. It's just a set of questions that hopefully you can use to change your life, right?
Yeah.
For you to use, for anyone to use to sort of just introduce this idea.
Yeah. And I hope that people buy it and read it, and it does make them just kind of sit back and think for a minute, like take their time and actually think about things a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Robert. I appreciate it. I think it is. I love the book. I definitely made me think about stuff that I wasn't thinking about before, but also reinforce the ideas that I've been having lately, that I've been kind of personally struggling with everybody rushing AI, and I'm not opposed to AI at all. Exactly. That's kind of where I want to focus next year, is bringing those tools better into the work that I do. But I just
Yeah.
I want to
You
slow down to get
take
better.
take the invitation that AI is giving us. And I use this example all the time. It's like I write a weekly column, and I've written a weekly column for the last 5 years. And that weekly column is, anywhere between 1,500 to 1,800 words every week without fail, right? I'm on deadline and I have to write a weekly column. And I would spend, a good 2-3 hours. If you look at Andy Crestadina's sort of, average blog time, I was writing that average 2 to 3 hours to write that post every week.
Yeah.
And in the last year, I've started using AI to slow that down, to introduce friction into it, to deepen my thinking, to pressure test my ideas, and what used to take me 2 hours now takes me easily 4 to 6 for each article. But I'm so much happier with the work.
Yeah.
The work is I'm happy. I don't know whether the audience knows it or not, or cares or not, but ultimately I'm happier with it. So it's better.
Yeah. I think that's important too. We think that yes, we're writing and we're doing stuff for an audience, but if you're not enjoying it when you're doing the work, what's the point? Like, to
Exactly.
me, I think there has to be something on both sides for everybody to be happy.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Robert. I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Ingenix and Discover CX by Ingenix, who sponsor the podcast. This is 7 years we've been doing this podcast, and we will be doing season 8. So that one will be interesting. Ingenix helps companies make content easier to create, manage, and deliver. Discover CX is built by Ingenix, and it's built for teams that need to deliver customer portals, help docs, and customer success sites. So it's all about write once, reuse everywhere, put content together from different sources, publish to any channel. It has built-in XML authoring, AI, customer portal, and headless delivery. And it's everything you need to keep content clear, consistent, easy to find, a modern way to deliver customer experience. Check out ingenix.com or discovercx.com to learn more about the platform that they both offer. While you're there, please sign up for our newsletter or sign up for the newsletter on LinkedIn. So we'll keep you up to date on all the different podcasts and what's going to happen in season 7, which I'm going to try to do something a little different. I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll find out. I don't even know what it is yet, but I'm going to do add some valuable friction
There you
in
go.
the
Yeah.
process and think about it. So that's great. That's it for season 7. Thank you, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the season. We had so many great people on it, and I'm very happy to end with you, Robert. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. This is fantastic.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.